King Charles has never been this furious. Not once in his entire reign. Harry and Meghan have crossed a line so serious, so deeply personal, that the king has responded in ways nobody expected. Meghan just went public and accused Charles of things so inhumane that people are still struggling to process it. And Harry stood beside her and backed every word. Charles heard it all, and then he moved. Harry has been thrown out completely, and the palace is already replacing him with James, the young royal nobody saw coming. This just got very ugly, and nobody was prepared for what comes next. The silence that said everything. King Charles III flew into Washington, D.C. in early 2026 and did something that stopped the entire world cold. He refused to see his own son. Harry was 40 minutes away. Just 40 minutes. The same distance as a short drive to a grocery store. And Charles did not just decline to visit. He had his team build an entire state itinerary around the fact that Harry would not be in it. Palace officials confirmed the schedule weeks in advance. And when Harry's team quietly reached out through back channels, hoping for even a brief private meeting, the response came back without conditions or alternatives. The request was simply declined. And Charles did not do this quietly. He did it in front of the most powerful political city on earth. He sat with White House officials. He moved through Washington with the full weight of the British state behind him. Every diplomat in every room Charles entered understood the message immediately. Harry holds no value to the British crown. He is a private citizen, and his proximity to the king means absolutely nothing at all. The international press registered the devastation of that moment instantly. But here is what the world had not yet fully understood. To know why Charles felt compelled to draw that line so publicly in front of the entire planet, you have to go back to one specific night in November 2025. You have to understand what Harry did on the most sacred day in the British military calendar. And when you understand it, the silence in Washington will make complete and total sense. Remembrance Sunday in the United Kingdom is the single most emotionally raw day in the entire British calendar. The king stands at the cenotaph in London. Absolute silence falls over the crowd. Wreaths are placed for the soldiers who went to war and never came home. Their names are read aloud one by one in front of a nation that refuses to let them be forgotten. In 2023 and again in 2024, Harry and Meghan had honored that day. They visited Camp Pendleton. They met with American service members and Gold Star families whose sons and daughters had died in combat. They paid their respects. Then came November 2025. And Harry completely broke that rule. He went to a party instead. The night before Remembrance Sunday, Harry and Meghan attended Kris Jenner's 75th birthday celebration at Jeff Bezos' Beverly Hills estate. The guest list was a Hollywood fantasy. Adele, Beyoncé, Mariah Carey, Oprah Winfrey, Kim Kardashian, Snoop Dogg, Mark Zuckerberg. Harry arrived in a black tuxedo, and pinned to his lapel was a remembrance poppy, the small red flower worn across the United Kingdom to honor the war dead in the days leading up to the commemoration. He wore the poppy. He went to the party anyway. The couple walked in holding hands. The cameras were everywhere. A Hollywood source said it plainly. If Harry and Meghan did not want the attention, they should have come in the side door like Beyoncé and Jay-Z. But Meghan loves the cameras. Now, here's what makes this genuinely painful to sit with. Harry is not simply a royal who missed a ceremony. He is a combat veteran. He served 2 tours in Afghanistan. He flew Apache helicopters as a co-pilot and gunner in Helmand Province, one of the bloodiest combat zones of the entire war. He has publicly described firing on Taliban targets. The soldiers being commemorated at the cenotaph that Sunday included men who had served alongside him in that exact province, in that exact conflict. Some of them came home in coffins. Their names were being read aloud in London, while Harry stood on a dance floor in Beverly Hills, wearing their flower on his chest like a costume piece. When the photos spread and the backlash exploded, the Sussex machine went into full panic. Harry and Meghan reportedly demanded that Kim Kardashian and Kris Jenner immediately scrub every image of them from social media. Their stated reason, leaked carefully to sympathetic outlets, was that they wanted to show respect for the fallen soldiers by not appearing in celebratory settings during a period of mourning. Kim addressed the removal publicly. She said they took the photos down to respect Remembrance Day and suggested people should just laugh about it sometimes. The reaction from London was totally something else. Royal experts said if the couple truly respected the occasion, they would have turned down the invitation before they ever stepped foot in that house. Military commentators were far less measured. Some said they were very disappointed in Harry. And then came the detail that makes this story even darker. Before the Remembrance Sunday party, there were still people inside the palace, not publicly named, who were quietly working towards some form of reconciliation between Charles and Harry. Private conversations had apparently been exploring whether Harry could spend quiet time with the king at Sandringham or Balmoral, away from cameras and press. The possibility was alive. People were fighting for it. The Kris Jenner party killed it permanently. The palace had its final proof. The crown's most sacred traditions were not something Harry held with reverence. They were a tool, something to pick up when a PR crisis demanded it, and put down the moment something more glamorous came along. And so months later, Charles stood in Washington, D.C., 40 minutes from his son, and chose silence. Not because he had given up on Harry, but because Harry had already made the choice for both of them on a Beverly Hills dance floor with a poppy on his chest. What the world did not yet know was that while Charles was maintaining that silence, Meghan was doing the exact opposite, because her world was burning down around her and she had already decided exactly who was going to take the blame. Meghan blames the king. Meghan Markle has the explanation for why everything is falling apart, and it is one of the most audacious things she has ever said publicly. Her Netflix projects are not stalled because the content is weak. Her deals are not dying because Hollywood has grown tired of her. According to Meghan, the real reason her work is not coming out is this. She respects King Charles III so much. She is so careful not to upset him that she has been holding back her projects to protect the royal family's reputation. To be completely clear about what she is actually claiming here, Meghan is saying that her cooking show, her lifestyle content, her brand, none of it can be released right now because she is too busy making sure it does not offend the king. That is what she wants the world to accept. She claims she knows exactly what Charles does to people who cross him, and she is very terrified of becoming the next one. But the irony is not even the most damaging part. The paper trail is. In 2022, the Netflix documentary Harry and Meghan used footage of private family WhatsApp messages, recorded phone calls, and behind closed doors, moments that members of the royal family never agreed to have filmed. In 2023, Spare published intimate details about family arguments, private medical information about living relatives, and personal conversations that were never meant to leave the room. When those projects were being made, royal standards did not exist. Nobody was protecting anybody. The institution was being dismantled in front of a global audience, and the couple was collecting a check for it. To suddenly invoke royal decorum now, only now, specifically at the moment when contracts are being canceled and the market has decided the product is overpriced and underdealt, is not restraint. It is a lie. And the receipts are everywhere. But this cooking show excuse is only the most recent entry in a record of blame that goes back years and gets significantly darker the further back you go. In the 20121 Oprah interview, Meghan revealed that while she was pregnant with Archie, members of the royal family held conversations about how dark his skin might be when he was born. She did not present this as a standalone event. She connected it directly to two things happening at the same time: Archie was being denied a prince's title. Archie was being denied security protection. She presented these as a pattern, a series of connected decisions made by people who had concerns about what her baby was going to look like. Harry confirmed those conversations happened. He refused to name who was involved. He said only that it was awkward and that he had been a bit shocked. Oprah later confirmed that Harry had told her neither the Queen nor Prince Philip were part of those conversations. That left the suspicion sitting permanently and publicly on other senior living members of the family. The accusation went around the world in hours. It has never been retracted, not once, not even partially. In that same Oprah interview, Meghan said something that made the entire world go quiet. She said that while she was living inside the palace walls, she was falling apart on the inside in the most terrifying way possible. She told Oprah she had gone to the institution and asked for help. She told them she was having thoughts, thinking of harming yourself. Were you having suicidal thoughts? Yes, this was very, very clear. And the institution looked at a woman who was telling them she did not want to be alive anymore and told her that getting her help would not be good for the institution. Meghan told Harry she sat with her husband and told him she did not want to be alive anymore. Those were her exact words. She said it was a very real, very clear, very constant thought. And it gets darker than that, because what the public cameras never captured were the moments behind closed doors that sources have since described as genuinely frightening. There are reports that during this period, Meghan would lock herself inside rooms alone, sometimes screaming, sometimes crying so hard and for so long that people nearby did not know what to do. And whatever was driving her to that point, she would not share with anyone. Her mother, Doria, found out eventually. And the way Doria described that moment tells you everything about how bad it truly was. Doria said it broke her. She said knowing that her daughter had reached the point of not wanting to exist, and knowing she could not reach through the palace walls to protect her, was an unbearable thing for a mother to hold. The palace issued its counterstatement. They said considerable resources had been offered to Meghan and that she had declined help. They stood by that firmly and repeatedly. Till date, no one's the truth. But one thing is clear, Meghan never took back her words. She continued to blame them. Then there is the miscarriage accusation. This one is the least discussed and possibly the most devastating of all. In the 2022 Netflix documentary, Harry stated directly that he believed Meghan suffered a miscarriage because of what the Daily Mail did. The Mail had published a private letter Meghan had written to her arranged father during her pregnancy, triggering a lawsuit, weeks of crushing stress, and sleepless nights that Harry said he watched destroy her. He acknowledged they could not know for certain, but he said clearly that he believed the media pressure caused the loss of their child. Now, here is the part that makes this significantly darker. The same documentary revealed that the letter to Meghan's father, the letter the Mail published, was written on the advice of Queen Elizabeth II and then Prince Charles. The institution Harry blamed for the media pressure that he believes caused the miscarriage was the same institution that had guided the action that created that media pressure in the first place. And then as recently as March 2026, palace sources described what they called genuinely horrifying behavior. Reports in the Sunday Times revealed Harry's camp was pushing for enhanced security arrangements, specifically so he could bring Archie and Leet to visit the king. A source stated that Harry had already lost his security case in court and was now using the threat of the king's grandchildren never seeing their grandfather again as a coercion tactic. The word used was emotional blackmail. The palace said it was truly appalling. Every single one of these accusations was broadcast to the world through one person, Oprah Winfrey. The 2021 interview reached 17 million American viewers. It was the most watched celebrity interview in years. But that interview is now considered a toxic asset inside Hollywood, and the reason is specific and clinical. During the interview, Meghan claimed that she and Harry had held a private wedding ceremony in their garden 3 days before the public royal wedding. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, the man who had actually conducted the ceremony, stated clearly and publicly that the only legal and valid marriage was the public one on the 19th of May, 2018. There was no private garden ceremony. For a woman whose entire brand is built on truth, on being the journalist who finds what is real, being the vehicle for a claim that was provably false is a wound that does not close. Oprah has since moved to a position of complete and permanent distance from the couple. People inside the industry describe it as a do not mention arrangement. The most powerful woman in American media, the woman who gave Meghan the platform that launched everything, has quietly and thoroughly walked away. That withdrawal is not just significant, it is the verdict. And while Meghan was building a case against the king, every single door in Hollywood was closing at exactly the same time. The collapse no one saw coming. There is one name in Hollywood that nobody argues with: Ari Emanuel. The man runs William Morris Endeavor, the most powerful talent agency on earth. His client list reads like a who's who of untouchable power: Dwayne Johnson, Mark Wahlberg, Oprah Winfrey, Serena Williams. Emanuel has spent decades absorbing the worst of Hollywood's worst behavior. The screaming, the threats, the midnight meltdowns, the impossible demands. He has sat across from the most volatile, most destructive, most nuclear personalities this industry has ever produced. And he has never once blinked. Managing difficult people is not just something he tolerates. It is what he built his empire on. And then Meghan Markle walked through his door, and within 2 years, he threw her out of it. Meghan had signed with WME in April 2023. Her agents were Brad Slater, the same man who handles Dwayne Johnson, and Jill Smaller, who handles Serena Williams. This was not just a business arrangement. This was Meghan planting her flag at the very center of Hollywood power. With Harry Emanuel's name behind her, every room she wanted to enter would open. Every deal she wanted to make would have the weight of the most feared agency on the planet behind it. It lasted less than 2 years before it collapsed completely. Sources confirmed that by January 2024, Emanuel had not sat in the same room as Meghan for a single meeting in months. Then came reports of an outburst that same month. Meghan had demanded an urgent meeting. She arrived expecting fully formed plans to already be waiting for her. When they were not, the room reportedly felt the full force of her frustration. One insider described that moment as the exact point when Ari was done with her. But done is not the same as gone. Emanuel held on until Thanksgiving 2025 when Meghan did something that finished it permanently. She demanded the WME staff cancel their Thanksgiving to manage her crisis, not postpone it, cancel it. She wanted round-the-clock crisis management on one of the most sacred American holidays from a team of people who had families waiting for them at home and turkeys going cold on tables. Dan Wooten reported what happened inside the agency when that demand landed. One insider said it with complete clarity. This is a company that is used to working with the biggest divas in the world. But when it came to Meghan, they looked at each other and said, "Enough. Our staff deserves a Thanksgiving." And they told her she was gone. Gone just like that. Now, here is the detail that makes this even more devastating. Meghan Markle has spoken publicly about Thanksgiving with genuine warmth on multiple occasions. She has described it as one of her favorite American traditions, a celebration of family, of gratitude, of togetherness. She demanded that her staff sacrifice the exact holiday she treasures for herself. The hypocrisy was so naked, so completely unguarded, that even people inside the agency who had defended her could not look away from it. And the consequences hit immediately and hard. One industry insider pointed directly to the most damaging result. The dispute between Meghan and Netflix, which exploded into a public scandal that spread across the industry press, would never have become public if Emmanuel were still her agent. His power would have buried it before a single journalist heard a whisper. Without him, every crack in her operation was suddenly visible to everyone. She was exposed. She was defenseless, and the vultures circled. The Netflix situation was already rotting from the inside. Projects that had been announced with enormous excitement were either dead on arrival or buried so deep in development that nobody could find them anymore. Meghan's lifestyle brand had launched with the name American Riviera Orchard, a name so aggressively aspirational it practically dripped with self-regard. Then, trademark disputes tore that name away from her and forced a rebrand to the considerably less glamorous as ever. The show itself, with Love Meghan, landed with reviews ranging from lukewarm to quietly brutal. The audience that had been electrified by her royal grievances sat down to watch her make jam and felt nothing. The Spotify deal was already dead. That contract had reportedly been worth $20 million. It was terminated in 2023 after producing almost nothing of substance. Spotify executive Bill Simmons did not soften the verdict when he addressed it publicly. He said the company felt cheated. He said it plainly and did not apologize for saying it. By 2026, there was no Spotify chapter left to reopen, no relationship left to repair, and no version of the story where that money had been worth spending. Every door was closing, and the worst was still coming. Now, look at Harry's speaking fees, because the numbers tell the story more clearly than any commentary can. At his peak, Harry was commanding between $300,000 and $400,000 per appearance. By 2026, his fee at a corporate event in Australia had dropped to $50,000. That is a collapse of more than 80% of his market value in under 5 years. The Montedo estate alone costs approximately $1 million annually in mortgage and maintenance. And that figure does not include the private security operation, the staff, the travel, or any of the infrastructure required to sustain their public presence. At his current rate, Harry's speaking income covers roughly half the estate costs before a single other expense enters the picture. The math is not difficult. It does not work. It has not worked for a long time. The luxury brands made their decision quietly and finally. Dior, Gucci, and Balenciaga reportedly issued polite rejections to partnership proposals from the Sussex camp. These houses build their value on permanence and timelessness. The last major royal figure they successfully aligned with was Princess Diana, a woman whose identity was built on grace, sacrifice, and tragedy. The Sussex identity is built on grievance, shifting narratives, and a credibility problem that the industry has stopped trying to ignore. Association with the Sussex brand was no longer seen as an opportunity. It was seen as a risk. What had once been called the Sussex Sparkle was now being referred to inside the industry as the Sussex Stain. By this point, every door was closed or closing. Every ally had quietly stepped back, and things were getting touched for Harry and Meghan. That was when they decided there was only one way to climb back up again: use their children. Harry had spent 5 years in courts and in speeches telling the world he would die before he would ever do that, selling the children. Harry sued a photographer in 2021 for taking aerial images of Archie playing in their private garden. He went to court. He won. He gave speeches about the psychological destruction that media exposure causes to children. He drew directly from his own childhood, watching his mother Diana and photographed and devoured by a press that treated her life as contempt. He aligned himself with advocacy groups that argued posting children's images without consent is a violation of human rights at the most fundamental level. In 2026, he flew to Canberra and stood before Australian politicians lobbying for stricter regulation of children's content on social media. He framed it as child protection. He presented himself as someone who understood more deeply than most exactly what that exposure does to a young life. The man delivering that speech was the same man whose team was uploading videos of Archie and Lilette to Instagram to keep their lifestyle financially alive. Australian journalists noticed. They wrote about it specifically. The man lobbying to protect children from online exposure was monetizing his own children on the same platforms. And the reason was not complicated. The money had run out. On the 5th of April, 2026, Meghan posted Easter videos on Instagram. Archie and Liette racing through the garden on an egg hunt. Liette in a summer dress and pink bunny ears walking alone with her basket. Archie at a table decorating eggs with a felt-tipped device. Comments were turned off before anyone could respond. The audience tore the footage apart anyway. Archie and Lilibet appeared almost the same height, despite being nearly 2 years apart in age. One viewer wrote that Archie had not visibly grown in 3 years. Another said he looked smaller than before, not larger. In the same clip, Libet appeared barefoot in what looked like warm summer weather, while Archie was dressed in a full jacket suited for cold. One person wrote, "She is barefoot and dressed for July, and he is head to toe in October, clothing in the same frame." A skiing clip posted separately showing Harry and Archie on snow slopes had already triggered debate about whether the footage had been assembled from different recordings taken at different times. Supporters defended the clips. Critics did not let it go, but the observation that spread further and hit harder than any of the visual inconsistencies was much simpler than any of that. Why are these children always completely alone? No friends, no cousins, no extended family visible anywhere? Just two small children in an enormous estate with their mother following them at a distance, with a camera while their grandmother's voice faintly encouraged them from somewhere off screen. Comments described them as the loneliest children anyone had seen on a public platform. Someone wrote that the most devastating moment in the whole video was watching Lilliette walk through the garden by herself while knowing her mother was right behind her, choosing to film instead of hold her hand. That same Easter Sunday, George, Charlotte, and Louis attended the Easter Matin service at St. George's Chapel in Windsor. They walked in public procession surrounded by their parents, their grandparents, Princess Anne, and the full assembled working family. They were inside something, connected to something, surrounded by roots and history and people who would be there long after any camera had been put away. The contrast between those two sets of children on that same Easter Sunday did not need to be explained. It was visible and it was final. Harry had spent years building a wall around his children, using every legal and public tool available to him. He argued for them in courts, he campaigned for them in speeches, he built an entire identity around being the father who would never let what happened to his mother happen to his children. By the spring of 2026, financial desperation had done what no court and no press could do. It had made him take that wall apart himself, brick by brick, and sell the view. And while all of this was unfolding in Montedo, in London, something else was happening entirely. Something quiet. Something the palace never announced or celebrated. Something that made every Netflix deal, every accusation, every Instagram post, and every legal filing completely and permanently irrelevant. The institution had found its replacement, and the speed with which it was done was the most devastating message of all. The replacement, the most brutal thing the British monarchy did to Harry and Meghan, did not make headlines. There was no dramatic announcement, no public humiliation, no legal action designed to hurt. The palace did something far more devastating than any of that. It cleaned out the space Harry had left, found someone to fill it, and moved forward so smoothly and so completely. In February 2021, Harry and Meghan surrendered all royal patronages. Organizations that had carried Harry's name for years were handed to other patrons without ceremony. His military titles, honorary roles with the Royal Marines, RAF Huntington, and the Royal Navy's small ships, and diving, roles that soldiers and service members had respected him for, were stripped from him and redistributed. His name disappeared from state occasion programs, from official engagement records, from every document that defines what the working monarchy actually is. Then, in April 2026, the 100th anniversary of Queen Elizabeth II's birth was marked with a major state commemoration. It was exactly the kind of occasion that Harry's supporters had long described as his potential moment of return. His absence was not discussed. It was not mourned. It was a single line, and then the event moved on without him. For years, Harry had been sitting on what he believed was leverage. His thinking went like this. Charles had deliberately slimmed the monarchy down to a smaller working group, meaning fewer royals were available to carry out the public duties, the state visits, the charity work, the ceremonial appearances that keep the crown visible and relevant to the public. Harry believed that gap would eventually force the palace back to him, that they would come quietly and offer him a way back in, that the institution needed him more than it was willing to admit. He held on to that belief for years. Then, one 8-year-old walked into the room, and Harry's leverage evaporated overnight. His name is James Alexander Philip Theo Mountbatten Windsor. He holds the title Earl of Wessex. He is the son of Prince Edward, Duke of Edinburgh, and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, and the youngest grandchild of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip. Here's the detail that carries a particular sting. James is the first grandson of the late Queen to be born in 23 years. The previous one was Harry. James grew up in Harry's shadow without ever knowing it. He is now standing in Harry's space without ever having asked for it. James was legally entitled to be called HRH Prince James from the moment he was born. That right was always his. His parents chose not to use it. And the reason Sophie gave in 2020 cuts right to the heart of everything. She said they were raising their children with the understanding that they would very likely need to work for a living. So the title stayed on paper. James grew up without a crown over his head and without the assumption that the world owed him anything. He was raised to earn his position. Harry was raised to assume his could never be taken away. That single difference explains everything that has happened to both of them. Now, look at what James has already done quietly, without cameras chasing him, and without a Netflix deal funding it. In 2022, when Queen Elizabeth died and the nation broke open with grief, James was 14 years old. He stood vigil beside his grandmother's coffin at Westminster Hall. He stood in complete silence alongside William Harry, Peter Phillips, and Zara Tindall while the entire world watched. In 2023, he attended the coronation of King Charles III. In March 2024, he was the only member of the younger generation of royals who showed up for the Easter Matin service at St. George's Chapel. He is now 18 and holds the legal right to formally take the HR title that has always been his. He has not rushed to claim it. People close to the palace have noted this specifically. This is a young man who feels no urgency to take what already belongs to him. Inside the palace, the strategy built around James has a name. Insiders call it the doctrine of continuity. The plan is to position James as everything the Sussex brand destroyed itself trying to fake, where Harry and Meghan turned the monarchy into a stage for personal grievances, strategic revelations, and media wars that kept them permanently at the center of the drama. James represents something the institution had almost forgotten it could produce. A young royal who simply shows up, does the work, and goes home without burning anything down. Multiple commentators have compared his composure at formal occasions directly to the late Prince Philip. William views him as a critical institutional asset. Anne, Edward, and Sophie have formed a wall of support around him that has not cracked once. This is not a family trying to patch over a wound. This is an institution that has found its upgrade and is installing it. Every argument Harry had for why the palace needed him dissolved the moment James stepped into those public duties and performed them without complaint, without conditions, and without a production company filming the whole thing. The numbers confirmed what the palace had already known for months. UK public approval of the monarchy climbed to its highest point since the immediate aftermath of the Queen's death in 2022. British tabloids that had built years of circulation on Sussex stories began cutting that coverage voluntarily because their readers had genuinely stopped caring. The commercial case for Sussex content had collapsed in the British press at exactly the same speed it had collapsed in Hollywood. The audience left. The papers followed. The palace had already been gone for a long time before either of them noticed. Harry and Meghan are not a family estrangement that time might heal. The office is cleared out. The name is off the door. The person sitting at that desk now got there by earning it quietly, year by year. The monarchy did not punish Harry. It did not chase him or condemn him or waste a breath mourning what he had chosen to throw away. It simply kept moving.